Like I could feel it when you were saying that, as if like, I didn't figure out my why yet. I'm supposed to have it. I got to know what it is right now. And if I don't know what it is, I'm stressed out of my mind. And no, that isn't how it works. And, but at the same time, for everybody listening, man, if you're helping people, you're always going in the right direction. And I'm going to drop another couple big knowledge bombs. Number one, don't do something you don't love, and don't spend your time trying to get better at something you don't love. So I want to share that with you, Hannah, that like, if you say, man, even if it was podcasting, right? Which I think you're doing really well at, so don't think that. But imagine you said, you know what? I don't want to do this. This isn't it. Well, but I started it, and we have the studio, and there's that guy Bruno and this guy Chris, and we got all these things. No. Like, man, then don't do it, right? Don't do something you don't love or it doesn't feel right. And then the next one, and this is a biggie.
I'm listening.
Here we go. If you are feeling really down or you're feeling anxious, figure out how to help somebody that has a bigger problem than you do.
Hi everyone, welcome to the MaxWellness podcast, where each week we chat to athletes, industry experts and influencers who share their journeys, tactical tips and lessons learned on how to maximize your wellness and smash your goals. So today we are joined by Martin Rooney, who is a trainer, an author, speaker and pioneer of strength and conditioning, and the host of Into the Raw podcast. So we're going to be talking about his most recent book, High 10, an inspiring story about building great team culture. So before we jump in, if you could please tell our listeners a bit more about yourself and your journey to where we are right now.
All right. Well, hey, Hannah, it is great to be coming in across the pond from the U.S., and I hope everybody is doing great today. I know we are going to have some amazing information for you, but if you are not familiar with me, I'm going to try to do this as quickly as possible. And I want to preface it with this. Everything that I'm about to say is true. It really happened. But because there are so many things, that just means I'm old, not that it means that I'm any more talented than anyone else. So here we go. I grew up outside of New York City, and my mother was actually a physical education teacher and a coach. So she was probably the first best coach and inspiration I ever had. She taught me to get 8 hours of sleep, eat a great breakfast, always train hard. And if you outwork your competition, you're probably going to be successful. And none of those things have ever failed me. Now, after high school, I went to college on a track and field scholarship. So I'm a track man, I guess you would say, and got my degree in exercise physiology. From there, everyone in the world said, or in my world said, Martin, you should be a physio. That's such a great job. It's exactly what you would do. And I listened, I pursued it, then also got my master's in exercise physiology as well. And in a weird twist of fate, I made the U.S. bobsled team. So yes, I was on the U.S. bobsled team, traveled around the world, experienced sport at the highest level. And really, it told me I want to be in fitness, I want to be in sport. But when my Olympic dream was over, it was time to be a physio. And I did that for a number of years, even though I knew that's not, man, it wasn't my passion. It wasn't my calling. And I think we're going to talk about that today. And there was such a knot in my gut that I just kept going to course after course for sports performance and fitness until I got involved with a buddy of mine who was starting a business in sports performance. And we built that into something called the Parisi Speed School with 100 locations across the United States. And that led to me training professional sports teams, top universities, pro athletes in every major sport. And then I created something called Training for Warriors. And at its zenith, we had 300 locations in 30 countries around the world until COVID, that is, and which has been a challenging time for all of us. And that leads me to here now, where I live in North Carolina with 4 kids, just wrote a new book, and currently on a podcast in South London. So that is the hopefully a quick story with some snippets in there. There's a lot more that people could Google, but hopefully that gives you an idea where we're at.
You can see the natural journey from USA bobsled team to podcast in South London. It made total sense.
Oh yeah, that was the only reason I did it. I said I gotta make this team. I have to make this team or I'll never end up on Hannah's podcast. What do I have to do?
It's a natural trajectory. I get it. I absolutely understand. So you mentioned your book, High 10 there, and you mentioned it in the intro as well. So what was the inspiration of the book? So it's not your first book. It's actually your second book.
No, well, it's actually my 12th book, Hannah. So
really?
Thanks for
Oh, well, I failed already.
But it's my second book in what I would, I guess, call business motivation, So yeah, you could consider it my second book and second book with this publishing house as well.
Okay.
So this is Wiley Publishing. They're the guys that do Patrick Lencioni's books, John Gordon's books, real big sellers in a particular space of what they call business motivation. And the genesis from it is I was teaching courses in culture and coaching around the world. And after each course, people would say, Martin, you gotta write a book about this. And it just never felt right. Like, I don't think coaching or culture is an if this, then that, or no one likes to read a textbook. And I sat on the idea for many years until I realized, man, you know what are the Irish really good at? If you see my last name, and that is telling stories, right? We were the bards, the famous bards throughout history. And I said, I can tell stories. Why don't I tell a story and get my ideas about coaching and culture across within the stories within the story? And although that was a great idea, then I realized I don't know how to write good stories. Now I got to figure that out. And it took a bunch of years, but I'm really proud of the books and people love them. Tens of thousands of copies have been sold around the world. And and they're helping a lot of people. And that, I think, is our ultimate goal for whatever it is we do. But that was the concept behind them was how do I get everybody to understand that they're a coach? And if you want to be a coach, you got to be able to coach for the culture that you want. And that's what these 2 easy to read books are. And I couldn't be more proud of them.
So it's not for people that are within sports. It's literally for everyone.
It is for everybody. Yeah. So I did a number of fitness books. I've had sport books. And what's interesting is that's you're actually limiting the number of people or your audience, which, hey, you can, what do they say? Itch your niche, right? So I did that already, but I wanted to do something that anybody could read it. So if you are a parent, if you're a business owner, but if you are an athlete or a coach, it's mandatory reading, but there hasn't been a person yet. You can check it out on Amazon. They have hundreds of 5-star reviews, and it's people from all different walks of life. And that's what I wanted to get across, that if you're a parent, if you're a business owner, if you're a teammate, a coach, a coworker, brother, sister, everybody's helping somebody else. And these books show you how to do it.
And why would you say people absolutely need to read this? How is this going to change their life, change their business?
Oh, I would say here would be a great answer. I already know it's going to happen because the material wasn't new. It was something that I had been teaching for over a decade. And so many people had such success with the ideas. I just couldn't figure out the medium to be able to get the ideas across as simply. And again, it's almost like they're a fictional story with dozens and dozens of stories within the story, and people just love reading it. Now, for everyone listening, you might say, I don't read much, or I'm intimidated by books. And I would say, don't be. This is the type of book that I believe people will read again and again and again. That's the mindset I went in when I wrote it, but it's also on audio if you prefer to learn that way too. But what I will challenge everybody, and this is a great one, Hannah, the only difference between the person listening right now and themselves 5 years from now will be the places they went, the books they read, and the people they met. And I will challenge everybody to do those 3 things, or man, you're going to miss out on some of the great lessons of how life will help chip away the imperfections to make you into the person you should be. And I believe these books will help people do that. And I'll make this right now. If anybody does get the book and you don't like it, write me and I will send you your money back. I don't know, in pounds if I must. But whatever it is, I am just sure people will like it. And that was how it was written, so definitely, yeah, people are going to benefit, but everybody gets something different. I think that's the magic of really cool books that I have read in my life that have done that for me.
I definitely agree with you on that one. I've got a few books that I always go back to every year because depending on where I'm at in my life at that time, I get something different from it. And I think that's why I enjoy your podcast as well. It's all the parables that are in it. So things like that, The Alchemist, I love The Alchemist because it's the parables.
It's so funny you said that because Coelho is that was the book. We're on the same wavelength, Hannah. That is the book. And it's I read it so long ago. I read it again and again. And you know what's funny? Do you know why it's different? Because you're different. You're not the same person you were a year ago or actually even before this podcast started. And so guys, that's a required one. So first two required books, these
Absolutely.
two, then The Alchemist can be next. And, and if I were to recommend another Coelho book after that, it would be The Pilgrimage, but he's written many, but I think those are my two favorite.
But I think that's the beauty of these kind of books is you can just keep going into it. And like you said, if we hope that you're not going to be the same person that you were previous to this podcast last year. So you are always going to learn something new. So a question I wanted to ask.
And here's a great piece of advice too, for everybody listening. If you do get into books, instead of reading 10,000, maybe you read the top 20 and you read them every year. And I'll tell you what, you'll still change your life. Right. And your library will be smaller, but you'll still, it's like going back to an old friend, right? You don't listen to your favorite song once and you don't watch your favorite movie once. Hey, but it seems like somebody reads a book and then throws it away, which is such a tragedy.
What I enjoy is when I get to read a book and then share it with someone else, get their point of view in it, and then you get to have a whole other discussion. All of a sudden you're like, I need to read this book again then, because the way they've interpreted this is totally different to the way I've interpreted this. And that's the beauty in it. So 100%. I think I'm more of an Audible person.
Huh.
It depends. It depends actually. I'm lying. I do love an Audible though, because I like to listen when I'm in the car.
Yeah. See, if I'm in the car, I'm traveling, I'll do it. But my brain starts racing and I miss things where I'm still so old school, man. I got to have that book in my hands. And it's my greatest trophy case is no longer all the stuff that I did, but it's my bookshelves. And every day I'm adding new ones to it, which I don't know. I think it becomes an addiction. I think there's something that happens to your brain that you just crave new ideas all the time. And that's why like I mentioned in the half hour that until this podcast, I was reading and I felt like, oh man, I'm reading something that I'm enjoying a lot that I almost didn't want to put it down. And that doesn't always happen.
I appreciate you putting that down to come and talk to us. So how do you develop clarity about the culture that you want to create? So how do you teach people that?
Wow. Well, how I developed clarity, you're going to love this. Do you know how I developed it?
Go for it. I'm intrigued.
Mistakes. How I developed it was making errors and disasters and catastrophes. And actually by being a really lousy leader, that's how I figured out the culture that I eventually wanted. Same thing in my house. I have 4 daughters. So for everybody listening, I know.
4 daughters.
So I got 4 daughters. I know everyone in South London right now is asking the same thing, right? Like, man, 4 daughters. Are you going to try for the boy? And my answer is I already tried 4 times. The shop is closed, right? Factory is closed. But, and if everyone can imagine, I've got 5 women in the house and myself. I'm outnumbered. I'm outgunned. I'm usually just known as the court jester at best. And, and there's never any money in my wallet, no matter when I check. It's, there's stuff gone. But I figured all this stuff out, by, trial and error and really, really making mistakes and learning from them. Right. And, but here's the neat part. And I'll tell you this, Hannah, and that's why we read books and that's why we listen to podcasts, is that there are 2 types of mistakes. One type of mistakes are expensive. Those are the ones that I was talking about that I made in many cases: errors, disasters, wrong use of money, communicating incorrectly, hurting feelings, losing the wrong people. But then there are inexpensive mistakes. And that is reading or learning about the mistakes other people made and the thing that you're wanting to do and then not making them. And here's what I would say. This book, if you read it, I give you a complete blueprint how to either engineer or design the culture that you want of your family or your business or your team. And you don't have to make the mistakes I did over 30 years of business and fitness in order to do it. And I think that's one of our goals, right? To how fast can we accelerate ourselves, not making all the mistakes that somebody else made. But remember what I said, if you don't read the books and you don't meet the people and you don't go to the places or the seminars or listen to the podcasts, then that acceleration doesn't happen. And then unfortunately, most people stay average because they choose not to do it. But we just already gave those secrets away. And if someone's listening to us, I know you're not that person because you're the person listening to this podcast. You're the action taker, right? And so I'm just asking you to do a little more. And that's what these are too, is a little kick in the pants to make you better.
Kick in the pants. I like that.
Well, hey, here's my definition of being a great coach. You ready? You've got to be able to properly navigate the distance between the shoulders and the butt, or as you guys would maybe say, the bum, because you got to know when sometimes they need a pat on the back and sometimes when they need a kick in the bum, right? So if you know how to navigate that properly and do it the right way, man, you'll be one of the best coaches you know.
You talking about learning from, obviously, getting other people to learn from your mistakes. There was a really good story that you did on one of your podcasts about a gentleman with a rock and about taking action.
Okay.
And he...
Is it there might be a few of those, but is it the obstacle and opportunity? That one with the rock? Maybe.
He basically, I'm going to absolutely sabotage your story.
He's got to move it out. Is it when he has to move it out of the way and no one else does it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one.
So very, very classic story. There's many ways that you can tell it, right? And a legendary version, which I'll try to tell now, is there was once a king in his country, and man, he just didn't believe that his people had heart anymore. They just didn't have the ethic. And he wanted to come up with an idea how he could reward it, but how he could also find that type of person. And to get into the kingdom, there was this giant wall. And there was only one entrance, right, through the drawbridge. And one day he puts a giant boulder. He has a number of people from his military put a giant boulder in front of it so that nobody can get into the city, right, into the kingdom. And what he did was he stopped and he hid along the wall and he just wanted to see how people would respond. And, the first workers come up, the shopkeepers, they come up and they said, oh, man, there's this giant boulder in the way. Well, I guess there's no work today. And they turned around and they went home. And then the next people, come up, the policemen or the people force, and they see the boulder. And they say, oh, man, look, there's a boulder here. We can't move it out of the way. They try a little bit, but they don't give much effort. And they turn around and go home. And more and more and more people confirm what the king feared, that most people, they just didn't want to do the work. They didn't want to take on a challenge. They didn't want to see if there was a bigger opportunity available, until this one young guy walks up. And he instead of getting frustrated by the boulder, he gets fascinated by the boulder, right? So listen to that. Instead of frustration, he has fascination. And now he looks at this boulder and he says, hey, look at this boulder. It's creating a problem. We have to figure it out. How do we get rid of this boulder? And he pushes on it. He realizes that's not possible. And man, he puts his shoulder into it and he realizes that's not going to work. And then he says, he has his eureka moment, just like Archimedes did. And man, he says leverage, right? He remembers that old line that, man, if you give me a long enough lever, I can move the world. And he goes and he gets this giant branch and he tries that. It's not enough. And then he gets this log with a fulcrum so long and he starts to pull and the boulder starts to move. And he moves it a little more and a little more and a little more until the boulder is out of the way. And just as he's about to go back into the kingdom, he looks down, and where the boulder once was, there was a box. And he opens up the box, and inside are a bunch of gold. There's just all this gold. But there was a note. And there was a note for the king. And he said, this is the reward for the person that understands with every obstacle, there is equal opportunity. And that's the story. I tell it different ways all the time, but hopefully everybody enjoyed that one. You're smiling, so I know I hit the mark.
Honestly, I really enjoy a parable. I really enjoy a parable. I think it's definitely my way of learning.
Yeah. Well, hey, these two books have 60 of them inside the story, all woven. People have no idea how long it took me to blueprint those and storyboard those. So I think people will like them. But if you like stories and you like parables, there's tons more just like that waiting inside. But they all kind of intermesh and intertwine into a tapestry of a greater whole about coaching and culture. And I've actually never said it that way before. And that was actually a pretty cool way to say it.
Don't worry, we can cap this for you. You can use it as promotion.
Yeah, I'm flowing right now. I'm flowing, Hannah. I can feel it.
It's because you're so close. You're talking to us. We're near to Ireland. You're connected to the roots. I feel like it could be because my background's also Irish. However, my surname's actually Scottish.
Don't try to jump across to our island now.
Excuse me?
No. Well, actually, hey, my oldest daughter, for everybody listening, how important it is. My grandfather was from Ireland, and his favorite university in the United States was Notre Dame, which they're known as the Fighting Irish. And it's one of the top universities, not just in the U.S., but I think accepted globally. And my daughter just started there 2 months ago. She's on the track and field team there. And it's just really, really cool to have come full circle, because this was my grandfather's biggest dream for somebody in our family. And for her to be there now, it's really, really cool. So again, it's not just lip service. It is something, I don't just say it to be convenient. There is a big part of, my history and my, roots. And it's interesting because how you had said, for everybody listening, you've probably thought it already too, right? You're probably like, listen to this American, listen to this guy. He's so American. But something that is really neat about America is we are all from somewhere else, and everybody, and we like to embrace that, and that's, there's nothing, that last name means a lot to me, and I always want to represent it well, so, but it makes you connected to everywhere else too, which is cool.
And that's a beautiful thing. There's always going to be a story there for you, or someone to share a story with you. It is, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's no joke. If you look at the history of the Rooney name, Rooney in Old Celtic means champion, which is pretty cool. You can look it up. I'm not just making this up. But the famous Rooneys were the bards, right? These were the storytellers that would be traveling with the king and everybody else. So I think there's something in there that I got a little piece of that, and that's why I'm able to, I don't know. That's why
your future was foretold.
In French, they would say I am a raconteur, which is, I think, just another word for storyteller, but it sounds cool.
It sounds better than storyteller. We're going to go with that.
Yeah, it sounds like so much cooler, right? Like when somebody asks me, what am I say that. They're like, ooh, they don't even want to ask. They just think that he must be important.
We don't want to sound stupid. We're just going to keep our mouth shut. So another thing I wanted to ask you, how do you transform your culture into the immune system of your team or your business?
Yeah, well, hey, and that, wow, that's a big question that we could take. Obviously I wrote a couple 100-page book on it, but what I would say is the first step would be, because you got to start with the first step, and it would be identifying what is the culture that you really want. And I think most people have never even probably asked that question. So look, we get married, but we never sit down to discuss or design the culture we want in our families. That's why maybe a lot of times they break down when they become something we don't want. It's the same thing for our businesses and our teams, that many times we design a logo or the color schemes or what our product or widget is, but we never come up with what is the culture and what do we want to stand for? What will we also not tolerate? And because no one has ever come up with that idea first, I think you will only get lucky when you come up with an incredible culture without it. So in order to infuse it, you have to first decide what it is. And when I ask people this, and next week I will be in Denver with a bunch of C-level executives for the minimum requirement is the company has to be worth more than $40 million to attend. And I have a feeling most of these guys will not have done this work either. And it's deep work that should happen first. But if it doesn't happen, then you still got to do the work, right? Like there's an old saying, what is it? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So same thing for your culture. If you have discovered you have a culture you don't want, or man, there are things that you don't agree with, then you have to address them. But the first step is deciding what it is. And then it's the meticulous process of putting it into place. And again, the book High 10 that I described, it shows you how to do it. It's going to entertain you, but it's going to give you a blueprint of how to do it if you do that work yourself.
I know for me, I've always struggled personally. And I think sometimes, because I've spoken openly on the podcast before about the fact that I can suffer from anxiety from time to time. I think a lot of it, and you get it a lot in certain cultures, especially within the fitness culture and stuff like that, and especially when you're trying to start a business, is everyone's like, what's your why? And there's books on it and how to discover your why. And it's always something that I've really struggled with, because everything I've done, I've naturally fallen into it. I've kind of thought, oh, this would be a good idea. I've done it. I've been good at it. I've fallen into it. This is fantastic. It's work. I'm really enjoying this. And it's just naturally been a stepping stone from one thing to, I've always played sports. Growing up, I played rugby. I played cricket. I've always been a dancer. And then it just naturally, I always knew I didn't want an office job. I knew I wanted to be doing stuff. So then I was like, cool. I left college. I was like, I've got this fitness instructor qualification. Let me just go and do that until I work out what my why is and what it is that I want to do. I'm not going to go to university unless I know exactly what it is that I want to do. So I started doing the fitness instructing. I was like, okay, I'm enjoying this. I'm not too sure why I'm enjoying this, but I'm enjoying this. I qualified to be a personal trainer. I got to work with people one-on-one. I'm really enjoying this as well. And I think naturally I've discovered my why, but I'm still not 100% sure. I'm almost 95% sure my why is I really enjoy helping people. And my avenue that I've done that in is fitness. And now I'm branching into more of the well-being side and the podcasting, so I get to branch out to more people. But I still don't know that I'm 100% sure on my why. I know that I really love helping people. So how, I guess where this is leading to, because we're discussing culture and creating that culture, and I think your why, me personally, you might disagree, but I think your why is a big part of that. So how would you help me, and how would you help the listeners, I guess, help discover their why? Because you are a gentleman of much experience, as we discussed. You're not old. You are experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. Vintage.
Vintage.
Right?
We like that. Worth lots.
So definitely, hey, I heard a lot of things there. And the first one that I want to help you with is, and for everybody listening, if you have felt anxiety, in particular in the last 2 years, since all of our challenges have happened, that does not make you weak. That makes you a human being. Right. And, so know that. And if there is that anxiety, then and see it for the positive that it is also, it's telling you there's something, it's telling you that either there's something you're not doing that you would like to be doing, or there's something you don't know that you need to understand and figure out. And when you understand that, use it for good versus that. And here's what I would say. You ready? Here would be a little advice. And these guys I have gotten from work with psychologists. This isn't just me saying this stuff, but instead of saying I'm anxious or I'm scared, do you know what's a good thing to say?
Go for it.
I'm excited. Like, man, I'm excited right now. This has me very excited. See, because it's the same, anxious and excited, you can almost see it the same way, but anxious might have a little bit of a negative to it, where excited, maybe you're going to turn that into something more positive energy. But that being said, hey, you are on an adventure. We are all on this journey, right? Whether you want to call it the hero's journey or not. And one thing that I will tell everybody listening is your why is not a fixed thing or a destination. It'll be something that continuously changes and evolves as you do. So already, for you to figure out, man, my why is to help people, you've already reached a very high level of humanity, if you will, because most people never realize that at the end of the day is what we all want to do. We want to serve, right? Like we want to have purpose. And that concept of serving, and if you can figure out the way you want to do it, your purpose, that is the why, right? Or that is the calling. Now, I already told you a little bit of my story. Everyone told me you should be a physio, but nobody ever asked me, do I want to be a physio? Now, I was helping people, but man, my body was telling me that that's where my anxiety came from. I had this knot in my gut. I'm going back to work. I'm sitting in traffic. And I had to learn to read that it was telling me you aren't helping enough people. There's something greater that you could do, and you need to figure it out. And it took me time. I didn't figure it out in a weekend just by asking, by watching a Simon Sinek video and figuring out my why, right? Like, at least it gets you going. But it's going to take time, and it takes experimentation to figure it out. And here's the other part too. And if it's not fitness, Hannah, or if it becomes not sport or dance or whatever else, that's okay. You got to have the courage, right, to chase the thing that feels right. And it sounds like you're on the process of doing that. So I don't have any fear that you're going to get there. But at the same time, too, I just want you to have the knowledge that it's not, man, like, ooh, you got it. And now it, and there it is. And now for the rest of your life, you've figured it out and you got it. And mine has always changed, right? Like I just mentioned my kids on this podcast and my daughter and where she's at, like mine, it's always changing. But if you keep that concept of service and how can you help somebody, man, then no matter what, actually you just said what it is. That's what it is. Now, whatever medium, the way that you do that isn't your why. That's just the way that you accomplish your why. And that is serving somebody else. So maybe we see, you're in the chair. Maybe we should have just had your feet up and, laying back. Yeah, guys, I am a physical therapist, not a psychotherapist, but definitely some of the things I said, I think just through experience probably help, but also it takes the pressure off that, like I could feel it when you were saying that, as if like, I didn't figure out my why yet. I'm supposed to have it. I got to know what it is right now. And if I don't know what it is, I'm stressed out of my mind. And no, that isn't how it works. And, but at the same time, for everybody listening, man, if you're helping people, you're always going in the right direction. And I'm going to drop another couple big knowledge bombs, right? Number one, don't do something you don't love, and don't spend your time trying to get better at something you don't love. So I want to share that with you, Hannah, that like, if you say, man, even if it was podcasting, right, which I think you're doing really well at, so don't think that, but imagine you said, you know what, I don't want to do this. This isn't it. Well, but I started it and we have the studio and there's that guy, Bruno, and this guy, Chris, and we got all these things. No. Like, man, then don't do it, right? Don't do something you don't love or it doesn't feel right. And then the next one, and this is a biggie, and this is what really helped me, because I'll be honest, I have never had more stress than over the last 2 years, because most of what I did and what I was passionate about and what I was what I consider my calling got taken away from me, right? Like my business and my speaking and my travel, that went to zero. And man, and then I was challenged, how do I provide for my family? And actually that was a big part of, so I sat down and said, well, if I can't use my energy to be in front of people speaking, then I'll write. And, so I tried to make some lemonade out of some lemons, but here was the biggest thing that helped me. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I was just making sure you're still listening.
I'm listening.
Here we go. If you are feeling really down or you're feeling anxious, figure out how to help somebody that has a bigger problem than you do. And man, if you do that, not only are you not going to feel anxious anymore, but you're probably going to be on purpose. And that was where I buried myself for the last 2 years, was all I thought about. And it's what I'm doing with this podcast right now. So for everybody listening, I hope you can feel it. That's why you're going to like this, is I want to help you. I don't want to talk about me. I want to help you in some way, that if in this time we've spent together, there's even one little idea that helped you out, and I'm trying to just drop off so many of them right now, then it was worth it. And not only that, but I'm in the zone, right? Like, so I'm so busy trying to figure out something that's going to help somebody that I'm not really worried or anxious about what's going on in my life. And hey, these are deep, deep secrets that everybody can feel and they get it. And that's where I spend my time now, is trying to identify them, but how to deliver them, whether it's in the writing, speaking, podcasting, etc. So pretty big stuff right there, I think. Hannah, what do you think?
Absolutely. And what I've taken from that, and it's stuff that I've been thinking myself as well, like during COVID, the last 2 years, it's been awful for so many people. But at the same time, I think it's been so transformative, because it has forced people to really sit down and think, I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. And I've seen the beautiful thing that's come out of it. I've seen so many people step away from what they were doing and step into their calling. They've been able to sit down and they've had time to actually go, you know what? This isn't me. This isn't what I'm meant to be doing. I was stressing myself out. They've realized they're replaceable, because COVID, all of a sudden, certain people were just getting dropped like absolute flies. They realized my business does not care about me. And it has forced people into that place of being uncomfortable, but it's also beautiful at the same time. It's a butterfly coming from its cocoon.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's kind of stepping into what a lot of people I've seen that I'm around anyway are stepping into that calling now, which is, as much as it has been a negative thing, which is what you were saying, for yourself, you got your book out of it. For a lot of other people, I think they're starting to step into their calling, which I think is a beautiful thing. Just to add the little exclamation mark onto what you said.
Baby, and you know what I did? I just wrote down 2 letters were exploding in my head when you were saying that. But I was listening, because one thing for everybody, if you want to be a coach, you got to listen, right? You got to listen. And not just listen, you got to hear. You got to hear. And what I was hearing you just saying, there were 2 letters that would be my reminder as I listened, R-E. And so what did COVID give us? It gave us a chance to be retrospective. That's the first RE. We could finally spend some time in our own head, right? And for many of us, maybe that was scary at first, but it got us to, here's the word, right? Reflect. It got us to reflect on our jobs, on our relationships. That's another RE, in our careers. And man, and many of us started to, next one, realize that maybe we were either redundant, which is the word they use in England a lot. They don't use it here for that one about our jobs, but they use it in England when you're redundant. And and then it got us to reevaluate and then possibly reset. And what you were just talking about is this giant reset, right? Like this opportunity to do that. And if you took it for that, man, there's so many positive things that maybe came out of it. And hey, and if you haven't done that again, you can start now. For everybody listening, that it's never too late to do that. And that's a process we should always do. So there should always be, not enough people do it, right? Like I spend certain time of the year, in particular, it's usually December, because I'm kind of reflecting back on the previous year, but looking forward to the next year. And man, COVID gave me the opportunity to do that more than ever. But we should always be doing that deep work to see, hey, where are we? Are we where we want to be? What do I have to do in order to move forward or get closer to where I want to go? And this last couple of years, for as bad as some of it was, it gave us a big opportunity to do that. And the people that took action on it are probably much happier than if it would have never have happened. Now, I will never say, boy, I'm glad this adversity has happened, but there are positives that you could take away from it.
Absolutely. So next thing I wanted to talk to you about was the 3 cornerstones of culture. So can you speak on that and how to eliminate the 5 culture killers?
Man, she's hit me with all the monster stuff, So here, we'll just go for another 42 hours straight. Everybody, actually, wait. Let me begin. I'm just going to read the book to everyone. Here we go. We'll start now. But so here's what I call the cornerstones, right? And for everybody listening, it was pretty neat that to take you through my process, I'm never going to write about something either that I haven't done or that I have not made a study for a really long time. And it's interesting. And do you know what these 2 books are? These 2 books, after reading all the books that I could get my hands on about culture, all the books that I could get my hands on about culture, do you know what those 2 books are, Hannah?
Talk to me.
There. I love that. Those are the 2 books that I kept going to the shelves or going to the bookstore to buy, and they didn't exist. I said, I got to write the book that isn't there. It's the book that I want that I don't have. Let me write that book. So really cool mindset to go in with. But of all the books that I had read, I really found that there were 3 cornerstones to culture. One of them was people. And interesting statement is you can't have culture without people. So if it's just you, there's no culture, it's you. But the minute you introduce somebody else, see, there's a culture on this podcast. And what is it? It's a little bit of humor. It's education. We're trying to help. This is the way that we're doing that. Now, if there were more people added, the more you add, right? So another cool line, more levels, more devils. But the whole thing is culture first has to have people, right? Your country, my country, there's different cultures because we have a different group of people. Now, how does that culture get shown off, or why is it different? There's different beliefs. That's the next one. So it's whether it's values, morals, ideas, those become, you know, how things are done, if you will, in say Britain versus America are different. So different culture again. And then the final part is the behaviors, right? The way that we act, right? So here would be a question. Do you ever do like tea time or anything? Do you do tea?
All the time. I did it today.
That doesn't exist here. We don't do that.
I'm so sad for Americans that literally doesn't exist. And I think they think it's like a fake thing that we do over here. No, 100% I have tea time. I'll go for afternoon tea with friends. It's the best.
We don't even believe it, right? See, ours is different. What we do, ours is very sophisticated. What we do is we go buy a coffee that's about 3 feet tall and we drink it. We drink it in about 30 seconds.
They're
and
absolutely
then
wired.
Yeah, and we wish that it was bigger. That's our tea time. But and within that gigantic bucket of coffee that we drink, we now throw in like 6 espresso shots too.
Oh gosh.
But what I'm getting at is those are the behaviors. So what you do, that's a behavior you guys do that makes your culture unique. And ours, we have different ones. So what are the cornerstones? And it's really cool where, again, I try to take big ideas and make them really simple to understand. So for everybody listening, when you're looking for people to learn from, don't find the person that takes an idea and makes it so confusing and complex so they look smart and you feel dumb. That's not the person to learn from. It's the person that can take something maybe hard to understand and make it easy. And what I'm trying to get you to understand is you got people, you got the beliefs of those people, and then the way that they act. So here's what's really cool. So here's how you define culture. It's the behaviors that people perform because of the stuff that they believe. And there's your culture, right? And as soon as I understood that, then I started to deconstruct it and say, well, then how can we change those things? How can you select those people? How can you decide on those beliefs? And then how can you either tolerate or administrate those behaviors to make sure you have the culture you want? And that has been what I've been working for within my own companies. And that's what I help other companies do when I consult for them to figure it out. And one of the pieces of the puzzle is that book, which is available on amazon.co.uk, which is the one I think you guys use. And, and I'll make some kind of special offer if you get it today too, I promise at the end. And, but yeah, like that's them. And when we talk about the killers, right? And there's so many different things. So guys, within the book, I show you how to stimulate your culture, how to nurture your culture, all the things that are very dangerous for your culture. But of all of them, I'm just going to give you one of them now. And that is, and you'll understand it because of how we've talked today, right? So, hey, what did you say before, Hannah? What did you say maybe your why is? We've already identified it today.
Helping people.
Helping people. So here's the thing. When your why is helping people, you remove the ego. So you didn't say helping yourself. You didn't say get more followers. You didn't say, hey, have more likes on Instagram. You said helping people. And see, when you've reached that level, you've learned the most important 4 words you can learn in culture. Do you know what those are?
No. I might know. Who knows?
Here, ready? It's not about me. Right? See, if you want to lead a culture, it's not about you, it's about them. If you want to be a great coach, it's not about you, it's about them. See, I'm very enthusiastic. You said that before, but my enthusiasm is directed toward the person I'm trying to help, not towards me. And when you get that right, that's when the magic of culture, that's when the magic of coaching happens. So the secret is not being enthusiastic, it's about being enthusiastic about them. And the secret is not about it being about you, it's about helping others. And then for everyone listening, if you've got those 2 right, I don't care what it is your company does, you're probably going to be on the right track and being more successful than the companies that get it wrong. And man, I never knew that was what we were going to talk about today, but there have been some nuggets of wisdom that if you could apply them, they're worth more than the weight of that boulder in gold. Boom.
Bam. Just dropping bombs left, right, and center, exploding. We're here for it. So I do want to get a little bit selfish now. So I noticed that you did jiu-jitsu. I read that were you a purple belt? Has that gone up? Are we still a purple belt?
Yeah. So I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, but and I'll explain why I always keep this on my desk. I'm a black belt in judo. And, but I've also trained really extensively on a lot of different martial arts. but in particular, mixed martial arts, where I was just at the UFC 2 weeks ago, cornering a fighter who has the most fights in UFC history. And, so he's got, it's more wins now than Michael Bisping, which might be important for the people listening there. And then I was helping consult the organization, the largest Latin American MMA organization in the world, this past weekend. And I don't say that to impress anybody, but impress upon them that here's an interesting thing. When you get to a certain level, whether it's as a martial artist or a person, it doesn't matter about the color of the belt anymore, right? Like it's, and you know what? It took me a long time to get there. I can remember, man, all I wanted to pursue was belts and stripes. And really, it was a big moment for me. There was a guy who was a Olympian, my mentor. And one day he didn't have his belt, so he put a white belt on. And I remember saying, like, what are you doing? And this guy wasn't just a black belt. He's like a red and white belt. That's how long he's been a black belt. And I'll never forget, it was one of the greatest lessons ever. And he just said, man, it doesn't matter about the color of your belt, right? Like it's about what's in here and what you believe about yourself. The color in the belt can't do anything for you, but man, it's your own attitude toward yourself. That's everything. So big lesson there within. I was
going to say, that's a definite transferable lesson that you can take from that.
Why do I keep this on my desk though? It's just to get it across to everybody. I don't keep it on my desk to say, ooh, I'm a black belt. I keep it on my desk as a reminder, two things. The first one is that the only reason I achieved it is because I was a white belt who never gave up. And I didn't not make any mistakes, but I made all the mistakes I could make. And then the goal is to not make them anymore, right? So that's the first one. And then now I'm going to give you something big. You ready on belts? Because you asked.
Go for it.
Go say, talk to me. That was the coolest.
Sorry. Talk to me.
Yes. So here's how it goes. So do you know what belts were originally for?
I actually don't.
They were to hold your pants up. No, and to hold the belt, the gi closed. So when Jigoro Kano, the inventor of judo, who is credited for bringing belts to the martial arts, they never had colors. But what it was is they also didn't have washing machines. And the guys that traded the longest over time, the belts became the darkest, and you learned to fear the guy with the darkest belt. And that became the difference of the colors and the different idea of a black belt. But do you know what happened to the belts if they kept going?
No. Broke.
If they kept going long enough, the outside of the fabric started to become weathered, and the outside of the fabric started to tear. And then when it wore away, the belt turned white again. And why I keep this is the reminder that inside of there, you got to always keep that white belt mentality, that inside there's always that white belt still there, because there are I'm going to give you 4 more. You ready for 4 super dangerous words that'll stop your growth?
Talk to me.
I already know that. So if you think, see, black belt doesn't mean you know everything. Black belt means you're on the hunt to learn everything. And so these are the reminders of why I keep it on my desk always, not just from a physical standpoint, but a mental standpoint too. But I think I went off a little bit on that, where you had a question somehow about the belt stuff. But yeah, martial arts has been, for the last 20 years, some of the, most impactful and biggest stuff in my life. And I'm still involved at a very high level to this day. But man, so many lessons that I've learned on there that there should be degrees given out like they do at universities.
Well, the reason why I said it was selfish, because I started Brazilian jiu-jitsu, about a year before COVID. And it was shout out to Southside Kings. That's who I was training with. And I never realized, especially with jiu-jitsu, you don't get your belts from, I don't know how it works in other martial arts, but you don't get it from, there's not like an assessment. It's from the amount of like hours or times you've been training for. Is that correct?
I think that could be unique to the dojo. But one interesting way, or at least when I was coming up, was, hey, if you're beating all the white belts, you're not a white belt anymore. If you're beating all the blue belts, you're not a blue belt anymore. So it was very difficult because you also had to be very proficient. But I know some of my friends have added much more systematic approaches to make it, more fair than that. And, so it's time, but also technical and what you're able to do, and education too, where I believe the arts like jujitsu and judo, there's a real educational component behind it as well. And jujitsu, as it becomes much more structured, I think they've been able to classify it much better now than when I got involved in the late 1990s. So, but that's up for the individual black belt that you train under.
I see. See, I've it's funny because I always knew I wanted to do a martial art. I didn't know what martial art I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to do boxing because in my brain, especially as a woman, I was like, if someone bigger than me or stronger than me wants to punch me in my face, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to be knocked out. There's no retaliation. Whereas in my head, I was just like, with a grappling. So I started with a couple wrestling things with another guy that I know from where I work. And then I got into the Southside Kings came to my gym. They're like, we want to run these classes. I was like, great. So I started it. And I just started it with the point of view of, okay, I'm going to do martial arts. I wanted to do martial arts. I'm going to do it. But for me, it was totally transformed into something totally different because I had to really think about my whole wellness. I've always been a dancer. My body's adapted to it. I was fine with that. But I really had to make sure in the evening I was having my hot bath. I had to make sure I was really doing a proper warm up, a good stretch down. I had to get real comfortable being in other people's personal space because I would come out of there. I didn't know if this was my sweat. I didn't know if this was someone else's sweat. It was a lot. And I started to really learn a lot. And it was, again, it gave me lots of transferable skills. I had to really assess before going in what I was going to be doing. I had to assess the person. And I think, again, I was able to transfer that into other places and I guess just be a little bit more open. And I think that's what I really enjoyed. So I think what I wanted to get at, because obviously you do jiu-jitsu, you do judo, there's the MMA side of it. So for me, it allowed me to really reassess my overall wellness and how I look after myself. Because I had to, otherwise I was going to end up injured and I couldn't walk the next day. The bruises that I had were horrific. So how do you promote wellness with your athletes? And I guess it's slightly different to how I had to approach it, but just generally with your athletes that you help train, how do you promote wellness, all-round balance, stuff like that?
Well, it's funny. One thing that you were describing that you may not have even realized is you were talking about comfort zones. And for everybody listening, hey, whatever you want to try out, it could be playing the guitar, it could be, whatever hobby. It doesn't have to be a martial art. There's going to be comfort zones and you're going to be uncomfortable at first. And you have to pass through those stages in order to ever stick with it long enough to ever probably become good at whatever it is you're trying to do. Now, in particular, what you described, jiu-jitsu, especially for women and men training together, everything else. Yeah, that's an uncomfortable environment for somebody that hasn't done that before. But it's funny that the end result, and I used to be quoted for this, I'd say, man, once you've gotten very used to somebody trying to choke you to death and you're comfortable there, there's almost nothing you can't do. Right. So that's, I think, what the art can offer if you spend enough time with it. But when you come back to wellness, that could be anywhere. So what I would say is for someone to take control of it, and I do this with my professional athletes all the way down to my children, man, hey, first one, right? Everybody needs, around 8 hours of sleep. Most people I meet don't even get close, right? So next one, you gotta at least figure out the number of calories you need and then hopefully put in good sources of that number of calories into your body. If you did that, you'd be also taking care of yourself. If there are injuries, hey, those should be things that you address. And then you should also be growing yourself personally and professionally. And man, what's interesting about it, right, is look what I just talked about: sleep, exercise, diet. And those should be what I call my non-negotiables. But most people, it's their expendables. And unfortunately, I believe your success in life or your health in life is going to be related directly to those three and what kind of attention you spend on those. So the challenge would be, before you ever even worry about jiu-jitsu or anything else, hey, can you get enough sleep? Can you eat right? Can you control your own self before you worry about now adding another hobby and you don't even have those things right yet. Right. So, and hey, and I know it's easier to talk about than it is to do, because if it was as simple as you just listen to me on a podcast and now you fixed it, I'd be, I know there's that guy, I forget his name. I have some of his books, the hypnotist that, it's like something like, I can teach you to be thin. I can teach you to stop smoking. It's a British guy. If you could just listen to my podcast and I could teach you how to get 8 hours of sleep, eat the perfect amount of calories and the right amount of food and always exercise, man, I'd be the richest guy in the world. But the whole thing is, there's no secrets here, right? I think everybody's waiting for the magic bullet. They want a sleeping pill, a superfood from the Amazon, and a machine that you can strap to yourself and it'll make you fit. But that's just not how it works. You got to do the work. And I wish I could say there was another answer, but it's get those three things right. And whether you're a pro athlete or a regular person, it stays the same.
It's action, isn't it? At the end of the day, you have to take action on everything. And I think you have to be assertive with what you're doing. You have to lead with intention. If you don't lead with intention, you're just going to get lost in a minefield, especially these days, because there's this whole thing of, I don't even know where it came from. I don't know if you have it in America. I know we definitely have it in England, where it's almost like praise that you don't get any sleep because you're working so hard towards your goal. So you're like, I only got 4 hours sleep last night because I was up until 3 o'clock in the morning working on this. And I hear it. Sorry, I really spoke fast then. I hear it and I'm like, nothing about this is healthy. Yeah. Yes, it's great that you're working towards your goal, but forsaking your sleep and your mental health and your physical health, your spiritual health, everything, it's just it's not healthy at all. And I think that's where sports can come in handy. Because by fire or force, you have to get that sleep. Otherwise, you're not going to recover. Yeah. And how is that not common sense anywhere else?
It's our culture again. See, I think that's where we are very similar, that it's, and it's a double-edged sword, right? Like, hey, we take pride in our work and there's this badge of honor. That's what you're almost describing. Like, oh, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night. And then the next guy's like, oh yeah, well, I only got 3. And I didn't even see my family for a week, and what people have to understand is, there is no exact balance. You said that word before, that, to be trying to be balancing, you got to always be off balance. But the thing is, there's still what's right. And what I have figured out is how to get enough sleep, see my family, get regular exercise, and improve myself, but still do my job. And that's where it's interesting that usually when I do an exercise with people, it's not that they don't have time, Hannah. It's where they spend their time. So here's the thing. If you asked me, if one of the questions was, what's all my favorite Netflix shows? I don't have an answer for you because I don't have time to invest in that, right? If you ask me, hey, where are all the shops and stores that I just hang out? Or how much time do I spend surfing through the lives of other people on social media? Which I believe are these huge time sucks, if you will. It's just, it like people don't even realize just how many hours they pour into those things that could be their sleep or could be something they've read or could be an hour of exercise a week. And so it's not that we don't have enough time. There's 168 hours in a week. It's just how you spend them. And most people don't have the discipline to spend them on the things that we're talking about. And they feel like they're missing out, right? Like, I can't get 8 hours of sleep. There's a show on, or there's something to do, but no, like, you're not missing something. You're doing the best thing for yourself. There is no species, for everybody listening, there's no species on planet Earth besides ours that denies itself sleep, right? Can you imagine? Can you imagine your dog being like, whoa, I'm really stressed out here. I got a lot going on. I'm going to just stay up all night, right? No, the dog's going to go to sleep. The dog's going to eat until it's ate enough. They just figure it out, right? And sometimes we got to get back to that, which is missing. And hopefully by me saying it tongue in cheek, it still hits home with you, the listener, so that, hey, you take a shot at it, right? Like, don't tell me why you can't do it. Hey, tell me how you could do it. How can you find an extra hours of sleep? What can you start doing to improve your sleep routine, or start adding that back as something important in your life? Because the reason people aren't getting sleep and the reason they're not watching their calories, man, they're just not paying attention, or they just don't think it's important. And unfortunately, it becomes real important when health issues surface. But why have that happen? Let's try to do something about it first.
It really is taking things back to basics. I think you've said it before, where it's just don't overcomplicate things. I think everyone feels like if something's more complicated, then it means you're doing it right. Yeah. That's not always the case. It really is take it back to basics.
Yeah, or they have an excuse why they're not doing it, right? So watch here. We're going to make nutrition very simple. Figure out how many calories you need, and don't say, oh, I don't understand how to do that. You can do a quick Google search. It'll show you immediately. And then insert foods in the hole under your nose in the right amount of that, and you'll be all right. Now, watch this game. Here, we're going to play the quick game. You ready, Hannah? Now, because you'll say, well, then I don't know the foods. Oh, yeah? Let's try. Here, you tell me good or bad. You ready, Hannah?
Go for it.
Broccoli.
Good.
Blueberries.
Good.
Strawberries.
Good.
Good lean meats or fish as long as you're not a vegetarian.
Good.
Okay, so you're at 100% right now. You're really killing it. Let's try some more. Oh, wait, water.
Good.
Tea.
Fantastic.
I'll even give you that one. I'll give you that. I don't know the science on it, but we'll go with it as long as they're not adding too much sugar or probably other things.
Yeah.
Right. But then let's try some more. Let's see. Tubs of ice cream.
I'm not going to say bad. I'm going to say not nutritious. I don't like to put labels of bad on food. I like to say it's not nutritious, high calories.
Tubs, like probably too much. But I guess what we're getting at is, hey, fast foods, fried foods, things with way too much cholesterol. What I'm getting at is it's not.
People know
hard.
The information. They're not stupid. Yeah. Everyone knows. Because if you say to people like, oh yeah, I just need to cut out crisps and chocolate. Okay, well, so you know what you need to do then. You're just not doing it.
Yeah.
And as we keep coming back to, take action. Just take action. If you do something today, just take action.
Yeah, fish and chips all day long, probably not good. Now, but here's an interesting thing, and I'll even give some people stuff, because I say the same thing. There's not inherently good or bad. Still, it starts with that caloric requirement. Now, here's the thing. If you just had fish and chips that day and you didn't have anything else and it was still under your requirement, you'd lose weight. That's just the law of thermodynamics. So the problem is, first, if you're not at the weight you want to be at, you're eating too much. But then, hey, figure out what are probably the better things to eat, where I'm going to probably say that, fresh fruits, vegetables are probably better than fried foods or something else. But these are all things under our control, just like sleep. And it's funny, you notice I keep saying sleep first, because for everybody listening, hey, if you don't get that one right, everything starts to go wrong. And so I am a defender of my sleep. And man, and I have been for a long time. And do you know what the most dangerous word is in the English language?
Talk to me. That's not it. I'm saying talk to me.
Yeah. Busy. Well, I can't get enough sleep, Martin. I'm busy. I'm working. I'm slaving. I'm doing my thing. Hey, I can't. And this is the one I love. Well, no, then they say, I can't exercise. I can't have a sport. I'm busy. This is the one I love the most. I can't eat right or the right amount. I'm busy. Wait a minute. So you're busy, so you put in more calories than you need? That one totally doesn't make sense. But the whole thing is, no, that means you don't know how to set up a schedule and discipline yourself. And I'm not going to give anybody that excuse, because there's 168 hours, 8 hours in the week. If you've been on social media and you watched a bunch of Netflix shows, or you can tell me who the characters are on Game of Thrones and which one you like the best, then you are not too busy. You just aren't. You're making excuses. Now, I know people don't like to hear that, but remember, sometimes it's a pat on the back. Sometimes it's a kick in the pants. You got to know which one somebody needs. And that one is the kick in the pants, because, hey, if you've got family members or businesses or whatever else, and they're counting on you, then you got to get that sleep and that nutrition right to be the best you, or you won't be. And even if you figure out your purpose or you find great wealth, if you're unhealthy, you're going to realize none of those are that important, and or they're not the big issues. So, yeah, big, deep live truths today from Hannah and Martin. Didn't know that was going to happen, but there are some good ones.
There was a meme style thing going around from the Dalai Lama, where he was talking about where we work, but at the expense of our health. And then the money that we've accumulated from working at the expense of our health, we then have to put back into our health to bring our health back up. And it's just this vicious cycle. I need to try and find it, and then we can post it, but it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's you make all this money and at the expense of your health, to then spend all the money at the expense of your health. So it's it's
We need to get out this rat race.
Yeah. Well, but it's all a mentality, right? Like I could either say right now I'm in this rat race, or I could say I'm doing what I love and I'm going to be in control of my schedule and get my job done.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, it's how you view it. And then those will be the actions that you take, right? So everyone's perception is their reality. And so you got to change your perception of where it is. So I don't say I got to get out of the rat race. I say I got to make my life more streamlined, right? I have to figure out my priorities and make sure that I'm acting in accordance with those, right? And maybe that's the biggest, another monster lesson, and we're uncovering them today. Do you know what it is that we like? You know what our greatest freedom is? It's control, right? Like, and everybody wants to pretend that everything's out of my control. Oh, I have to work because somebody told me this, or this is how I have to eat because I don't have time, or I have to do this. I have no control. No, you got to get that control back, because no one controls you, right? I can tell you to think blue all I want. You can think red. And so you are in control here. You call the shots. The actions you take are the result of the thoughts you have. So here's what I will say. Have positive thoughts, have productive thoughts, and you will have a positive, productive life. But if you have negative thoughts, and I'm in this rat race and I can't get done and I'll never get that sleep and this is impossible and that won't work, then that will also be exactly the reality you get. And again, not a therapist, but I play one on podcasts sometimes.
And I say you're pretty good at it. So I want to start to round it up now, because I've realised that I'm literally drawing the absolute life out of you with all this information. I'm absolutely loving it. But we always like to finish. What's the one bit of advice you could give the Max Wellness listeners to maximise their wellness?
Wow.
Da, 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 da.
I think I already did it.
I
today.
feel like you have, but that one nugget.
I think we hit a top 10. But so how to maximize their wellness? Yeah, I mean, since we hit that topic really big, I would say, guys, start with your sleep, right? It's, see what you can do to get 8 hours, right? See what you can do to turn off the technology earlier. See what you can do to control the lighting. See what you can do to control the temperature. Make sure the bed is right for you, and challenge yourself to get a champion night's sleep. Because see, maybe it'd start there. And if you got the 8 hours, then you might say, wow, well, you know what? Maybe I'll try the broccoli. And wow, now I'm having the broccoli. I'm feeling better. I got more energy. Hey, let me try that new workout or that new sport. Wow, I'm doing that sport and I'm eating the broccoli. I'm getting all the sleep. I'm feeling so great. Holy cow. And do you see how it might just all start with one really good night of sleep? Because it's got to start somewhere, especially if you want to make a change. And maybe that would be the best place. And because I'll say this, can't use the word wellness if you're getting 3 hours of sleep a night. You just can't. So maybe we should start there. Boom.
Bam. So could you talk to me? Can you let all our listeners know where they can find you? Let them know about your podcast. Oh, we didn't even get to touch on that, but let them know about your podcast as well.
Yeah. Well, here's what I would say. Hey guys, I've talked about these books today, and I got an interesting offer. If you do order the book, and I'm begging you to do it because I'm telling you it'll make you better. I promise. I got a special thing for you. I will, if you enjoyed this today, I've got so many different speeches, other stuff that I've given. If you buy the book and you send me a copy of the receipt to martin@coachinggreatness.com, I will send you a bunch of different bonuses, a bunch of links to videos that that would have cost $500 to attend, right? So it's going to be 10, 20 times the value of the book that you buy. And I promise you'll love the book anyway, right? But if you choose not to do that and you want to just learn more, you can check me out at the Martin Rooney on Instagram. You'll see a lot of the stuff that I'm doing. You can check out my website, coachinggreatness.com. And or if you're on Facebook too, or LinkedIn, I'm on there too, always sharing good stuff and trying to help make everybody better. But if you want to help me help you, check out one of the new books, either Coach to Coach High 10, and I promise you won't regret it. And I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation of what you thought of it if you write me about it, which hopefully you do. So that's all I got.
You'll definitely be hearing from me. We're going to round it up there. thank you so much. I got so much more out of you than what I was even expecting. This is fantastic. And people didn't even hear the half an hour conversation we were having before we even got on here. That's why I said to say to Bruno, I was like, record, there's nuggets here that we're not getting. It was fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we can touch base again, because like I said, I still had a load of questions on there that I didn't even get to ask.
Well, hey, and all the listeners, if you liked this and you did listen, let Hannah know, and then we'll know if you guys want to hear from me again, and maybe we'll do this again. She'll shoot from the British Museum. I'll shoot from this bunker where I am in North Carolina. It'll be perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And what time is it there?
It is 3:49 p.m.
So have a great afternoon. We're in the evening here, so have a fantastic afternoon.
Yeah, we're just getting started.
Hope it's productive. Get your 8 hours sleep. Bam. I feel like the topic of this one has to be talk to me. Talk to me. But yeah, anyway, I'll let you go and enjoy your afternoon. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
I'll be in contact. You'll be getting the receipt from the book from me. All right, see you later, Martin.
Bye-bye.